How does it feel to be handed a divorce petition with your full name in bold? All because of one trip, one soulmate, and one laugh too many at your husband's expense. Can you call it freedom when the only answer you get is an envelope and a look so calm it feels like goodbye? What happens when the only person who remembers your story is the one erasing you from his? My name is Ivadne Hartley, and I thought I had everything figured out. I thought I deserved more than what I had. I thought wrong. The Barcelona hotel lobby buzzed with the energy of professionals networking, coffee cups clinking, and the soft hum of conversations in multiple languages. I stood near the registration desk for the HR Excellence Conference, adjusting my name tag and smoothing my blazer. At 33, I'd worked hard to get here. Senior HR specialist at a mid-sized consulting firm, respected by my colleagues, trusted with important client relationships. But standing there, I felt invisible. Back home, Caleb would be grading papers in his methodical way, probably eating leftover pizza, while our 7-year-old son Daniel watched cartoons. The routine had become suffocating. When was the last time my husband had looked at me with genuine interest? When had we last talked about anything beyond grocery lists and parent-teacher conferences? First time in Barcelona? The voice came from behind me, warm with a slight Spanish accent. I turned to see a man about my age, dark hair slightly tousled, wearing a perfectly fitted navy suit. His smile was the kind that made you forget your own name for a moment. "Yes, actually, I'm Ivadne Hartley," I said, extending my hand. "Jasper Marín, and what a beautiful name, Ivadne, it suits you perfectly." He held my hand just a moment longer than necessary. "Are you here for the conference?" "I am. You?" "Same. I specialize in international HR consulting, based here in Barcelona, but I travel frequently to the States." His eyes sparkled with mischief. "Perhaps you'd allow me to show you the real Barcelona. The conference dinner tonight will be terribly boring, I assure you." I should have said no. Should have mentioned my husband, my son, my perfectly adequate life back in suburban Ohio. Instead, I heard myself saying, "That sounds wonderful." That evening, Jasper took me to a small tapas bar tucked away in the Gothic quarter. The wine flowed freely, and for the first time in years, I felt alive. He listened when I spoke, laughed at my jokes, and made me feel like the most fascinating woman in the room. "You're married," he observed, noticing my ring as I reached for my glass. "Yes," I admitted, surprised by the reluctance in my voice. 15 years, high school sweethearts. Ah, the classic American love story. But tell me, Ivadne, when did you last feel your heart race? When did someone last make you feel like you could conquer the world? I stared into my wine glass, unable to answer. Caleb was steady, reliable, safe, but when had safe become synonymous with boring? "I can see it in your eyes," Jasper continued softly. "You're a passionate woman trapped in a passionless life. There's nothing wrong with wanting more." The next 3 days blurred together in a haze of stolen moments. Conference sessions became secondary to long lunches with Jasper, evening walks through the city, and conversations that stretched late into the night. He made me feel beautiful, desired, important, everything I'd been missing at home. On our last night, as we sat on his hotel room balcony overlooking the city lights, Jasper took my hand. "This doesn't have to end in Barcelona," he said quietly. "I have business in the States regularly. We could see each other." "Jasper, I'm married. I have a son. I'm not asking you to leave your family. I'm asking you to live a little. You deserve happiness, Ivadne. You deserve to feel alive." I thought about Caleb, probably asleep in our bed, tomorrow's lesson plans neatly organized on his nightstand. When had we stopped talking about dreams? When had we stopped laughing together? "I need time to think," I whispered. "Of course, but promise me you won't forget how you feel right now. Promise me you won't go back to sleepwalking through your life." The flight home felt endless. I stared out the window, Jasper's words echoing in my mind. My phone buzzed with a text from him. Missing you already. When can I see you again? I should have deleted it. Instead, I saved his number under conference contact and typed back, soon. Caleb picked me up at the airport, Daniel bouncing excitedly in the back seat. Mummy, did you bring me something from Spain? Of course, sweetheart. I handed him a small Barcelona football jersey, watching his face light up. How was the conference? Caleb asked, as we drove home through familiar suburban streets. Educational, lots of networking opportunities. The lie came easily. Actually, I've been thinking. I need some space to figure things out, some time to focus on my career development. Caleb glanced at me, confusion flickering across his face. What kind of space? Maybe we could try a trial separation, just temporarily. I could stay at Lynn's for a while, or we could alternate weeks here with Daniel. The car fell silent except for Daniel's excited chatter about his new jersey. Caleb's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. This is sudden, he said finally. It's not sudden. I've been feeling disconnected for a while. The trip just gave me clarity about what I need. And what you need is space from your family. Space to grow, to figure out who I am outside of being just a wife and mother. Caleb pulled into our driveway and sat for a moment, staring at our house. If that's what you need, I won't fight you on it, but I want what's best for Daniel. Of course, this isn't about Daniel. This is about us finding our way back to each other. Even as I said it, I knew it was a lie. This was about Jasper, about the way he made me feel, about the excitement I'd been missing. Caleb was a good man, a good father, but he was predictable, safe, and I was tired of safe. That night, as Caleb slept beside me, my phone lit up with another message from Jasper. I can't stop thinking about you. When can we meet? I typed back, working on it. Give me a few weeks to arrange things. You're worth waiting for, but not too long. I'm not a patient man when it comes to something I want. The thrill that shot through me at his words should have been a warning. Instead, it felt like validation. Someone wanted me desperately. Someone found me irresistible. I was about to discover that getting what you think you want can be the most dangerous thing of all. 3 weeks later, I'd moved into Lynn's spare bedroom, spinning a story about needing time to rediscover myself and work on personal growth. My younger sister had always been the supportive type, asking few questions and offering plenty of wine and sympathy. I just don't understand what happened, Lynn said one evening as we sat in her living room. You and Caleb always seemed so solid. That was the problem, I replied, scrolling through my phone. Solid became stagnant. I felt like I was disappearing into the role of suburban housewife. What I didn't tell her was that Jasper had been in town twice already. We'd met at an upscale hotel downtown, stolen away for long lunches, and texted constantly. He made me feel alive in ways I'd forgotten were possible. Have you thought about marriage counseling? Lynn asked gently. Caleb's not interested in changing. He's comfortable with our routine. Another lie. I hadn't even suggested counseling. Why would I, when I had something so much better waiting for me? My phone buzzed with a text from Jasper. At the Marriott downtown, room 847, champagne is chilling. I stood up, grabbing my purse. I'm meeting some colleagues for drinks. Don't wait up. Lynn frowned. You've been going out a lot lately. Are you sure this separation is helping you figure things out? Absolutely. I'm networking, building professional relationships. This is exactly what I needed. An hour later, I was in Jasper's arms, feeling more desired than I had in years. He had a way of making me feel like the center of the universe, like I was the most fascinating woman he'd ever met. I have an idea, he said as we lay in the hotel bed afterward. There's this new rooftop bar that just opened. Very trendy, lots of young professionals. We should go. Is that wise? What if someone sees us? So what if they do? You're separated. You're allowed to have a social life. He traced patterns on my shoulder. Unless you're ashamed of me. Of course not, you're right. I shouldn't have to hide. That was my first real mistake. Well, my first public mistake. The rooftop bar was everything Jasper had promised: sleek, sophisticated, filled with attractive people in expensive clothes. We found a corner table with a view of the city skyline, and Jasper ordered a bottle of champagne. "To new beginnings," he toasted, and I clinked my glass against his. The champagne went to my head quickly, and soon I was laughing louder than I should have, leaning into Jasper's stories, feeling reckless and free. When he suggested we take a selfie with the city lights behind us, I didn't hesitate. "You look absolutely radiant," he murmured, showing me the photo. I did look good, happier than I'd looked in years. "Post it," I said impulsively. "Are you sure?" "Why not? I'm not doing anything wrong." He posted the photo to his Instagram with the caption, "Perfect evening with a perfect woman. Barcelona, at our new beginnings, at our Ihnen beautiful." Within minutes, the likes and comments started rolling in. Jasper's friends from Spain, colleagues from various conferences, and then, my heart skipped, people I knew from back home. "Oh God," I whispered, staring at my phone. "My coworker just liked this, and my neighbor. So, you look amazing. Let them see how happy you are." But as the night wore on, and more notifications poured in, I began to feel uneasy. Several people had tagged Caleb in comments, asking if he knew his wife was having such a good time without him. Someone had even screenshot the photo and shared it with the caption, "When your husband thinks you're having a girls' night." "Maybe I should go home," I said, suddenly feeling less confident. "Don't let small-minded people ruin your happiness," Jasper said firmly. "You're doing nothing wrong. You're a beautiful, successful woman, enjoying an evening out. Anyone who has a problem with that is just jealous." His words made sense. I was separated. I was allowed to have a social life. If people wanted to gossip, that said more about them than about me. The next morning, I woke up at Lynn's with a pounding headache and 17 missed calls from various family members. The photo had apparently made its way to Facebook, Instagram, and several local social media groups. My mother, Roxana, was the first to call back. "Darling, you look absolutely stunning in that photo. Who's the handsome man?" "Just a colleague, Mum. We were at a networking event." "Well, he's certainly looking at you like you're more than a colleague. Good for you. You deserve some excitement after all those boring years with Caleb." My mother had never been Caleb's biggest fan, always thinking I'd settled too young. Her approval should have felt validating. Instead, it made me nervous. The next call was from Eleanor, Caleb's mother. "Ivadne, dear, I saw some photos online. I'm sure there's a perfectly innocent explanation, but people are talking, and I'm worried about Daniel. Children hear things at school." "Eleanor, I'm separated. I'm allowed to have friends." "Of course, dear. I just think perhaps some discretion might be wise, for everyone's sake." But it was the call from Caleb that really shook me. "Ivadne, we need to talk." "About what?" "About the fact that our son came home from school crying because kids were asking him why Mommy was kissing another man in pictures online." My stomach dropped. I wasn't kissing anyone. It was just a friendly dinner. That's not how it looked to a 7-year-old, or to anyone else, apparently. My principal pulled me aside today to ask if everything was okay at home. "That's ridiculous. People need to mind their own business." "You made it their business when you posted it publicly. Daniel is confused and hurt. He wants to know why you don't want to live with us anymore, and now he's asking if you have a new family." Guilt twisted in my stomach, but I pushed it down. This is exactly why I needed space. Everyone's overreacting to a simple photo. Simple? Caleb's voice was quieter now, which somehow made it worse. "Ivadne, I've been patient with this separation. I've tried to give you what you said you needed, but our son is suffering, and you're parading around with another man like our marriage never mattered." "I'm not parading around. I'm living my life. With him." The way he said it made it clear he knew. Somehow, Caleb knew this wasn't just a casual friendship. "I need time to figure things out," I said weakly. "How much time? And what exactly are you figuring out? whether you want to be married to me or to him. I couldn't answer that, because the truth was, I was already choosing Jasper. I just wasn't ready to admit it yet. I have to go, I said, hanging up before he could respond. But even as I tried to justify my actions to myself, I couldn't shake the image of Daniel crying at school. I couldn't forget the disappointment in Caleb's voice, or the way people were looking at me differently now. Jasper called that afternoon, laughing about something his Spanish friends had commented on the photo. "You're famous in Barcelona now," he joked. "Everyone wants to know who the beautiful American woman is." "People here aren't quite as amused," I said, filling him in on the family drama. "Small-town mentality," he dismissed. "They'll get over it, or they won't, and you'll be better off without their judgment." "It's affecting my son. Kids are resilient, he'll adjust to the new normal." His casual dismissal of Daniel's pain should have bothered me more than it did. But I was so caught up in the intoxicating feeling of being wanted, of being the center of someone's attention, that I let it slide. That evening, I made another mistake. I posted my own photo, a selfie from Lynn's backyard, looking relaxed and happy, with the caption, "Living my best life, no regrets." The comments that followed would haunt me for weeks to come. The Monday morning after my "Living my best life" post, I walked into my office to find my supervisor, Margaret Chen, waiting by my desk with a cup of coffee and a serious expression. "Ivadne, could I see you in my office for a moment?" My stomach dropped, but I followed her down the hall, trying to project confidence I didn't feel. "Please, sit down." Margaret closed the door and settled behind her desk. I wanted to have a conversation about social media presence and professional image. "Is there a problem? There have been some observations about your recent online activity. As you know, our company values discretion, especially given our client relationships and the sensitive nature of HR work." I felt heat rising in my cheeks. "I'm going through a personal situation. I haven't posted anything inappropriate." "I'm not questioning your right to a personal life, Ivadne, but when photos of you with unknown men start circulating in professional circles, and when clients begin asking questions about our team's stability, it becomes a business concern." "What kind of questions?" Margaret pulled out her phone and showed me a screenshot. Someone had shared the rooftop bar photo in a professional networking group with the caption, "Is this the kind of family values we can expect from our HR consultants?" My face burned with embarrassment and anger. That's completely unfair. My personal life has nothing to do with my professional capabilities. In a perfect world, you'd be right, but we live in reality, where perception matters. I'm not asking you to change your personal choices, but I am asking you to consider how your online presence reflects on the company. So I'm supposed to hide in shame because I'm separated from my husband. You're supposed to exercise good judgment about what you share publicly, especially when it involves someone who isn't your spouse while you're still legally married. The meeting left me shaken and angry. I called Jasper during my lunch break, needing reassurance. "They're trying to control you," he said immediately. "This is exactly the kind of small-minded thinking that keeps women trapped in unhappy situations. But what if I lose my job? Then you find a better one, with a company that values your skills over outdated moral judgments. You're brilliant, Ivadne. Any company would be lucky to have you." His confidence in me was intoxicating, but it didn't pay the bills or cover Daniel's expenses. That evening, I had dinner with Lynn, who seemed increasingly uncomfortable with my situation. "People are talking, Ivadne," she said gently as we picked at our salads. "Let them talk. I'm not doing anything wrong." "Aren't you, though?" Lynn set down her fork. "I mean, you're still married. You have a child. And this man you're seeing, Jasper. Right, Jasper. What exactly are his intentions? Because from the outside, it looks like you're having an affair while using the separation as cover." "It's not an affair. Caleb and I are separated." "A separation you asked for right after meeting this man. Come on, Ivadne. I'm not stupid, and neither is anyone else. I wanted to argue, but the truth was becoming harder to deny. I had asked for the separation specifically so I could explore things with Jasper, but that didn't make it wrong, did it? Even if that's true, I'm entitled to pursue happiness. At what cost? Daniel asks about you constantly. Caleb looks like he hasn't slept in weeks. And now your job is at risk. Daniel will adjust. Caleb will find someone better suited to his boring lifestyle. And I'll find a job that appreciates me. Lynn stared at me like she didn't recognize me. What happened to you in Spain? You used to be thoughtful, considerate. Now you sound like what? Like someone I don't know. That night, I lay in Lynn's guest bed scrolling through social media, watching the comments and reactions to my posts multiply. Some people were supportive, talking about women's empowerment and the right to happiness, but many more were critical, calling me selfish, a bad mother, a cheater. One comment particularly stung. Poor kid, imagine having to explain to your classmates why your mom is all over social media with random men while your dad is home alone. I was about to delete it when I saw who had written it. Lydia, Caleb's younger sister. She'd always been outspoken, but this felt like a public attack. I typed back, "Maybe focus on your own life instead of judging mine." Her response came within minutes. "Hard to focus on anything else when your nephew is asking why his mommy doesn't love daddy anymore. But sure, keep living your best life." The exchange spiraled from there, with friends and family members taking sides in the comments. By morning, the whole thing had been screenshot and shared across multiple platforms. I was still stewing about it when Jasper texted, "Saw the drama online. Want to get away from all the negativity? I'm at the Hilton, room 1205. I should have said no. Should have stayed home and figured out how to fix the mess I'd created. Instead, I found myself driving downtown, desperate for the escape Jasper provided. "You look stressed," he said when I arrived, pulling me into his arms. "Everyone's against me. My sister, my in-laws, people at work, they're all acting like I committed some terrible crime." "You know what this is?" Jasper poured 2 glasses of wine from an expensive bottle. "This is what happens when you refuse to play by their rules. They want to keep you small, keep you trapped in their narrow definition of what a woman should be." "But what if they're right? What if I am being selfish?" "Selfish?" He cupped my face in his hands. "You're the least selfish person I know. You spent 15 years putting everyone else's needs first. Now you're finally putting yourself first, and they can't handle it." My son is confused and hurt. Children adapt. He'll be better off with a happy, fulfilled mother than with parents who are miserable together. Caleb isn't miserable, isn't he? Come on, Ivadne. You told me yourself how distant he'd become, how routine your marriage had gotten. He was taking you for granted. Now that he realizes what he's lost, of course he wants you back. Jasper's words made sense, or at least they felt like they made sense when I was wrapped in his arms, dizzy from wine and attention. "I need to be more careful about social media," I said. "Or," Jasper suggested, "you could stop caring what small-minded people think. You're a beautiful, successful woman. Own that." He convinced me to post another photo that night, the 2 of us at dinner, looking happy and carefree. The caption read, "Grateful for people who see the real me." No apologies, and living authentically. The reaction was swift and brutal. My phone exploded with notifications, angry comments, concerned messages from friends, and several texts from family members begging me to reconsider. But the worst was a simple message from Caleb. "Daniel saw the photo. He asked if you're going to marry the man in the pictures. I didn't know what to tell him." For the first time since this all began, I felt a crack in my certainty. The image of my 7-year-old son, confused and scared about his family falling apart, cut through all of Jasper's reassuring words. But when I voiced these concerns to Jasper, he pulled me closer and whispered, "Don't let their guilt trips pull you back into a life that was killing your spirit. You deserve so much more than what they're offering." And despite everything, the job concerns, the family drama, the pain in my son's eyes. I believed him. I wanted to believe him so desperately that I ignored every warning sign screaming at me to stop. I was about to learn that some mistakes can't be undone, and some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt. I should have noticed the change in Caleb sooner. Looking back, the signs were all there. The way he stopped arguing with me about the separation, the calm acceptance in his voice when I called to arrange visits with Daniel, the methodical way he began handling all our shared responsibilities. At the time, I interpreted his behavior as resignation, maybe even relief. I told myself he was finally accepting that our marriage was over, that he was moving on just like I was. I couldn't have been more wrong. The first hint that something had shifted came during one of my scheduled visits with Daniel. I'd taken him to the park, trying to recapture some normalcy, when he asked the question I'd been dreading. "Mommy, are you and Daddy getting divorced?" I knelt down to his level, choosing my words carefully. "Sometimes adults need time apart to figure things out, sweetheart. It doesn't mean we love you any less. But Tommy's parents got divorced, and now he has 2 houses and 2 Christmases. Is that what's happening to us?" The matter-of-fact way he asked it broke my heart. "I don't know yet, Daniel. We're still figuring things out." When I brought him home that evening, Caleb was waiting in the kitchen with homework spread across the table and dinner warming in the oven. The domestic scene felt foreign to me now, like visiting a life I used to live. "How was the park?" he asked Daniel, helping him out of his jacket. "Good. Mommy pushed me really high on the swings, and I told her about my math test." "That's great, buddy. Why don't you wash your hands for dinner?" As Daniel ran upstairs, Caleb turned to me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "We need to discuss some practical matters," he said quietly. "What kind of matters?" "Financial arrangements, Daniel's schedule, legal stuff." Something in his tone made me uneasy. "Legal stuff?" "I've been doing some research about separation agreements, custody arrangements, that sort of thing. Just want to make sure we're handling everything properly." "That seems premature. This is just temporary while I figure things out." Caleb studied me for a long moment. "Is it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've already figured things out." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I've seen the photos, Ivadne. Everyone has, and I'm not going to keep pretending this is about you needing space for personal growth." Heat flooded my cheeks. "I'm allowed to have friends." "Friends?" He said it like he was testing the word. "Is that what we're calling it?" "I don't know what you want me to say. I want you to be honest, with me, with Daniel, with yourself. If you want a divorce, just say so. Stop hiding behind the separation story." The directness of his words caught me off guard. For weeks I'd been expecting him to fight for our marriage, to beg me to come home, to make grand gestures to win me back. Instead, he was calling my bluff. "I'm not hiding behind anything. I'm trying to be thoughtful about a difficult situation." Thoughtful. He almost smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Right." That night I called Jasper, rattled by the conversation. "He's trying to pressure you into a decision," Jasper said immediately. "Classic manipulation tactic. Make you feel guilty so you'll come running back." He didn't seem manipulative. He seemed resigned. "That's even worse. He's given up on your marriage without a fight. What does that tell you about how much he really valued what you had?" Jasper's interpretation made sense, or at least it was easier to accept than the alternative, that Caleb was simply done with my games and ready to move forward with or without me. Over the next few weeks, I noticed more changes in Caleb's behavior. He stopped asking about my living situation or when I might come home. He handled all communication about Daniel through text messages, brief and businesslike. When I called to talk about household matters, he was polite but distant, treating me more like a coworker than a wife. "He's probably seeing someone," my mother suggested during one of our phone calls. "Men don't handle being alone well. I'm sure he's already looking for your replacement." The idea should have bothered me more than it did. Instead, I felt almost relieved. If Caleb was moving on, it would make everything easier. But then Lynn mentioned something that made me reconsider. "I saw Caleb at the grocery store yesterday," she said over coffee. "He looked terrible, Ivadne. Like he hasn't been sleeping. And he was buying those frozen dinners, the kind single men eat. Maybe he's just tired. Teaching is stressful. Or maybe he's heartbroken and trying to hold it together for Daniel's sake." I pushed down the guilt that tried to surface. If he's heartbroken, he's hiding it well. He barely talks to me anymore. "What did you expect? You're publicly dating another man while still married to him. What's he supposed to do, compete for your attention?" "I'm not dating anyone. Jasper and I are friends." Lynn gave me a look that said she wasn't buying it any more than anyone else was. That weekend, I took Daniel to a movie, and afterward, we stopped by the house so he could pick up some toys. Caleb was in his study, surrounded by papers and files spread across his desk. "Daddy's doing lots of paperwork lately," Daniel told me as we gathered his action figures from his room. "What kind of paperwork?" "I don't know, but he stays up late working on it. And he talks to lawyers on the phone sometimes." My blood ran cold. "Lawyers?" "Yeah. He uses his quiet voice, but I heard him say words like custody and assets and stuff." I tried to keep my expression neutral, but inside, panic was building. "Did he say anything else?" "He asked me lots of questions about where I want to live, and if I like staying at Aunt Lynn's house. I told him I want to live here with both of you, but he said that might not be possible." When Daniel went to use the bathroom, I found myself walking toward Caleb's study. The door was slightly open, and I could see him organizing documents into labeled folders. One folder caught my eye. Financial records. Another. Communication log. A third. Evidence. Evidence of what? "Find what you're looking for." Caleb's voice startled me. He was standing in the doorway, blocking my view of the desk. Daniel mentioned you've been working a lot lately. Just getting organized, making sure all our paperwork is in order." "What kind of paperwork?" "The kind that responsible adults keep track of. Tax records, insurance documents, bank statements, that sort of thing." But I could see there was more to it than that. Much more. "Caleb, if you're thinking about filing for divorce, I'm thinking about protecting my son's interests. Whatever happens between us, Daniel needs stability." "He has stability. He has both of us." "Does he? Because from where I'm sitting, he has one parent who's present and one who's too busy with her new life to focus on her family." The accusation stung because it held more truth than I wanted to admit. "That's not fair." "Fair?" Caleb stepped closer, and for the first time in months, I saw real emotion in his eyes. "You want to talk about fair? Is it fair that our son cries himself to sleep because he thinks his mother doesn't love him anymore? Is it fair that I have to explain to his teacher why he's been acting out at school? Is it fair that my colleagues look at me with pity because my wife is all over social media with another man? I never meant for any of that to happen. But it did happen, and you keep making choices that make it worse." Daniel's voice called from upstairs, breaking the tension. "Mummy, I can't find my robot." "We'll be right there," Caleb called back, then looked at me. "This conversation isn't over, but it's not happening in front of Daniel." As we helped Daniel find his missing toy, I couldn't stop thinking about those folders on Caleb's desk. What kind of evidence was he collecting? And what did he plan to do with it? That night, I tried to push my worries aside as I met Jasper for dinner at a new restaurant downtown. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted, that Caleb wasn't just passively accepting our separation anymore. "You seem distracted," Jasper observed over dessert, "just family drama. Caleb's being difficult about some practical matters." "What kind of practical matters?" I told him about the lawyers and the paperwork, expecting sympathy and reassurance. Instead, Jasper frowned. "That doesn't sound good. If he's building a case against you..." "A case for what?" "Custody, divorce proceedings, financial settlements. If he can prove you abandoned your family for another man, it could affect everything. Fear shot through me. He can't do that. I'm still Daniel's mother. Of course you are, but courts look at stability, moral character, what's in the best interest of the child. A mother who leaves her family to pursue an affair doesn't exactly fit the ideal profile. It's not an affair, we're separated. A separation you requested immediately after meeting me. Come on, Ivadne. Any lawyer worth his fee could connect those dots. The restaurant suddenly felt too warm, too crowded. So what are you saying? I'm saying maybe we need to be more careful. Maybe we should cool things down until your divorce is finalized. The word divorce hung in the air between us. Until that moment, I'd been living in a fantasy where I could have both, my family when I wanted them, and Jasper when I needed excitement. But Caleb wasn't playing by those rules anymore. I don't want to cool things down, I said quietly. Then you need to make a choice. Him or me. Family court judges don't like ambiguity. As I drove home to Lynn's that night, Jasper's words echoed in my mind. Make a choice. The problem was, I was beginning to realize that while I'd been playing games and posting photos, Caleb had already made his choice, and I was about to discover just how methodical and thorough a high school teacher could be when he set his mind to something. The Hartley family Sunday dinners had been a tradition for as long as I'd known Caleb. Every week, his parents, Eleanor and Richard, would host the family at their comfortable suburban home, complete with pot roast, homemade rolls, and the kind of warm chaos that comes from multiple generations gathered around one table. I hadn't attended one since the separation began, but Daniel had been asking to see his grandparents, and Eleanor had specifically requested that I come this week. For Daniel's sake, she'd said on the phone, though something in her tone suggested there was more to it. I should have known it was a trap. I arrived at the familiar house on Maple Street to find the usual suspects assembled. Eleanor bustling around the kitchen, Richard reading the newspaper in his recliner, Lydia scrolling through her phone on the couch, and Caleb helping Daniel with a puzzle at the coffee table. The picture of domestic normalcy felt surreal after weeks of hotel rooms and clandestine meetings. Ivadne, Eleanor greeted me with a hug that felt slightly forced. So good to see you, dear. You look, well. Thanks, Eleanor. Something smells amazing. Just the usual pot roast. Daniel specifically requested it. As we gathered around the dining room table, I tried to ignore the undercurrent of tension. Conversation was stilted, focusing on safe topics like Daniel's school performance and Richard's garden. But I could feel Lydia watching me, and Caleb's silence was more pointed than usual. So, Richard said as Eleanor served dessert, how are things going with your personal situation, Ivadne? Fine. I'm still figuring things out. Must be nice, Lydia muttered, not looking up from her pie. Excuse me? Must be nice to have the luxury of figuring things out while other people handle your responsibilities. Lydia, Eleanor warned quietly. No, Mum. Someone needs to say it. Lydia finally looked at me directly. Do you have any idea what you've put this family through? What you've put Daniel through? I think that's between Caleb and me. Is it? Because Daniel is my nephew and I love him. And watching him confused and hurt because his mother is too busy playing house with some stranger to care about her actual family makes me sick. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? Lydia pulled out her phone. Because I've seen the photos. We all have. The whole town has seen them. Heat flooded my face. Those photos are perfectly innocent. Innocent? Lydia laughed bitterly. There's a picture of you two at some fancy restaurant looking like you're on your honeymoon. There's another one of you at a hotel bar. And my personal favorite, the one where you're practically sitting in his lap at that rooftop place downtown. I'm separated. I'm allowed to have a social life. A social life? Is that what we're calling it? Richard set down his fork, his usually gentle demeanor hardening. Ivadne, I've known you since you were 18 years old. I've watched you grow into a woman, become a mother, build a life with my son, and I've never been more disappointed in anyone in my entire life." The words hit like a physical blow. Richard had always been kind to me, supportive, welcoming. Hearing such harsh judgment from him was devastating. "Dad," Caleb said quietly, "Daniel's right here." "You're right." Richard looked at his grandson, who was staring at his ice cream with wide, confused eyes. "Daniel, why don't you go play in the backyard for a few minutes? Grandpa needs to have a grown-up conversation." "Are you going to yell at Mommy?" Daniel asked in a small voice. "No one's going to yell," Eleanor assured him, though her smile was strained. "Go on, sweetheart." Once Daniel was outside, Richard turned back to me. "I've been married to Eleanor for 37 years. We've had our ups and downs, our difficult periods, but never, never would either of us humiliate the other the way you've humiliated my son." "I haven't humiliated anyone." "Haven't you?" Lydia was scrolling through her phone again. "Because I'm looking at comments on your latest post right now." "Poor Caleb. How embarrassing for the husband. She's not even trying to hide it anymore. Should I keep reading? Those people don't know our situation." "What situation?" Lydia's voice was rising. "That you met some guy in Spain and decided your 15-year marriage wasn't exciting enough anymore. That you asked for a separation so you could play around without technically cheating. We all know what's happening here, Ivadne. The only person still pretending otherwise is you." I looked around the table desperately, seeking an ally. Eleanor was studying her hands, clearly uncomfortable but not disagreeing. Richard was shaking his head in disgust. And Caleb was watching me with an expression I'd never seen before. Not anger, not hurt, but something colder. Calculation. "I think I should go," I said, standing abruptly. "Yes," Richard agreed. "I think you should." As I gathered my purse with shaking hands, Lydia delivered one final blow. "You know what the worst part is? You could have handled this with some dignity. You could have been honest about wanting a divorce, worked out custody arrangements, ended things respectfully. Instead, you chose to drag it out publicly, humiliating Caleb and confusing Daniel, all so you could have your cake and eat it too. Well, congratulations. You got everyone's attention. I hope it was worth it." I fled the house without saying goodbye to Daniel, tears of rage and humiliation burning my eyes. In my car, I sat for several minutes trying to compose myself before calling Jasper. "They ambushed me," I told him through tears. "His whole family ganged up on me. They're acting like I committed some terrible crime." "Where are you now?" "Leaving their house. I can't go back to Lynn's like this. Can I see you?" "Of course. I'm at the apartment. Come over." Jasper's temporary corporate apartment was in a sleek downtown building, all modern furniture and floor-to-ceiling windows. Usually, being there made me feel sophisticated, worldly. Tonight, it felt like a refuge. "You're shaking," Jasper observed, pulling me into his arms. "They hate me. His whole family hates me. They're protecting their own. It's natural, even if it's unfair to you. Richard said he was disappointed in me. He's never spoken to me like that before." "Because you're finally standing up for yourself instead of being their perfect little daughter-in-law. They can't control you anymore, so they're trying to shame you back into line." Jasper poured me a glass of wine and listened as I recounted the entire awful dinner. His sympathy was exactly what I needed, his reassurance that I wasn't the villain in this story. "You know what?" he said after I'd finished. "Let's go out. Show them you won't be intimidated." "I don't think that's a good idea." "Why? Because they might see us?" "Good. Let them see that their little guilt trip didn't work." Against my better judgment, I let him convince me. We went to an upscale bar in the Arts District, the kind of place that attracted young professionals and creative types. Jasper ordered champagne, and gradually, my humiliation began to fade into defiant anger. "To authentic living," he toasted, "and to people brave enough to choose happiness over other people's expectations." Several drinks later, when Jasper suggested we take a photo to commemorate the evening, I didn't hesitate. We posed by the bar's signature neon sign, me laughing at something he'd whispered in my ear, him looking at me with obvious adoration. "Post it," I said recklessly. "I'm tired of hiding." The caption read, "Some people will never understand that life is too short to live for anyone but yourself. No regrets. Authentic life. Grateful." The reaction was immediate and brutal. Within an hour, the photo had dozens of comments, most of them scathing. But it was the private messages that really cut deep. "Lynn, Ivadne, what are you doing? This isn't you." My boss, Margaret, "We need to talk first thing Monday morning." And then, the one that made my blood run cold, Caleb, "Thank you for making this easier. My lawyer will be in touch." "What does that mean?" I asked Jasper, showing him the message. He frowned, reading it twice. "It means he's done playing games. It means he's filing for divorce." "But I'm not ready for that. I haven't decided what I want yet." "Sounds like the decision has been made for you." As we sat in his apartment later that night, the reality of my situation began to sink in. I'd burned bridges with Caleb's family, potentially damaged my career, and now faced the prospect of a divorce I wasn't sure I wanted. "What if I've made a terrible mistake?" I whispered. Jasper was quiet for a long moment. "Do you want to go back to him?" "I don't know. Maybe. I never meant for things to go this far." "Ivadne, look at me." He tilted my chin up. "You can't go backward. You can't undo what's been done. The only choice now is to move forward." "With you?" Another pause, longer this time. "We'll see where things go. But first, you need to get through this divorce." Something in his tone made me uneasy, but I was too emotionally drained to analyze it. I'd deal with the implications tomorrow. Tonight, I just needed to forget that I'd potentially thrown away my entire life for a man who was already talking about our relationship in uncertain terms. But forgetting, I was about to learn, wasn't an option anymore. Caleb had been collecting evidence for weeks, and I'd just handed him the final piece he needed. The envelope was waiting on Lynn's kitchen counter when I stumbled in the next morning, still wearing yesterday's clothes and nursing a hangover that felt like divine punishment. My sister was already dressed for work, coffee mug in hand, her expression carefully neutral. "This came for you," she said, nodding toward the thick manila envelope bearing the letterhead of Davidson, Walsh & Associates, attorneys at law. My hands shook as I tore it open, though I already knew what I'd find. The divorce petition was thorough, professional, and devastating in its clinical precision. Irreconcilable differences, request for primary custody of the minor child, division of marital assets, and attached to it, a folder labeled supporting documentation that made my stomach drop. Photographs, screenshots, hotel receipts, credit card statements showing charges at restaurants where I'd been with Jasper, text message logs that somehow included conversations I thought were private, social media posts with timestamps and comment threads, even witness statements from family members and colleagues. It was all there, every lie I'd told, every manipulation I'd attempted, every public humiliation I'd inflicted, laid out in black and white with the methodical precision of a man who'd spent months building an airtight case. "Jesus," Lynn whispered, reading over my shoulder. "How did he get all of this?" "I don't know." But even as I said it, I was remembering things. The shared tablet where I'd sometimes checked messages, the joint credit card I'd used for hotel dinners, the public posts that anyone could screenshot, the family members who'd witnessed my behavior firsthand. I'd been so focused on justifying my actions that I'd never considered how they looked from the outside. Now, seeing it all compiled together, I felt sick. My phone rang. Margaret from work. "Ivadne, I need you to come in immediately. We have a situation." "What kind of situation?" "The kind that requires an emergency meeting with HR and legal." "How soon can you be here?" An hour later, I sat in a conference room facing Margaret, the company's legal counsel, and the head of HR. On the table between us was a printout of last night's photo and a stack of what looked like complaint letters. 3 clients have expressed concerns about your recent behavior, Margaret began. They're questioning whether someone who displays such poor judgment in their personal life can be trusted with sensitive employee relations matters. My personal life has nothing to do with my professional capabilities, doesn't it? The legal counsel leaned forward. You've publicly documented an extramarital affair while still married. You've shown disregard for your family's privacy and well-being. These are character issues that directly impact your ability to counsel others on workplace behavior and ethics. I'm separated from my husband. A separation you requested immediately after meeting your current paramour, the HR director said, consulting her notes. The timeline is quite clear from your social media activity. They'd done their homework too. I was beginning to realize that while I'd been living in a fantasy bubble with Jasper, everyone else had been watching, documenting, judging. We're placing you on administrative leave pending a full review, Margaret announced. You'll need to surrender your company laptop and access cards. You can't fire me for this. We're not firing you, yet, but we're protecting the company's interests while we determine the best path forward. I left the office in a daze, my career in shambles, my marriage over, my relationship with my son in jeopardy. I needed Jasper's reassurance more than ever, but when I called, it went straight to voicemail. The next few hours passed in a blur of panicked phone calls. A lawyer who quoted fees I couldn't afford. A custody mediator who asked pointed questions about my living situation and relationship status. A real estate agent who explained that I'd likely need to sell the house to split assets. It wasn't until evening that Jasper finally called back. I've been thinking, he said without preamble, about us, about the situation you're in. I need to see you, everything's falling apart. That's what I want to talk about. This is getting complicated, Ivadne, more complicated than I signed up for. Something cold settled in my stomach. What do you mean? I mean, I came to the States for business, not to get involved in a messy divorce. This whole thing is becoming very public, very ugly. It's not good for either of us. So, what are you saying? I'm saying maybe we should take a step back, let you sort out your legal issues without the complication of our relationship. The words hit like a physical blow. Are you breaking up with me? I'm being practical. You need to focus on your divorce, your custody battle, your career. I'm just a distraction right now. You're not a distraction. You're the reason I did all of this. You're the reason I left my marriage. No, Ivadne, you left your marriage because you were unhappy. I was just the catalyst. Don't do this, please. I've lost everything for you. You've lost everything for yourself, for the choices you made. I never asked you to leave your husband or humiliate your family online. But you encouraged it. You said I deserved happiness. You do deserve happiness, but I can't be responsible for providing it, especially not like this. The line went dead. I stared at my phone in disbelief, then called back immediately. It went straight to voicemail. I tried again, and again. Finally, a text came through. I'm sorry. This isn't what either of us wanted, but it's what's best. Take care of yourself. I collapsed on Lynn's couch, the full weight of my situation crashing down on me. I'd destroyed my marriage for a man who was abandoning me at the first sign of real consequence. I'd humiliated my family, jeopardized my career, and traumatized my son for someone who couldn't even be bothered to break up with me in person. Lynn found me there an hour later, sobbing into a throw pillow. What happened? Jasper's gone. He said it's too complicated, too messy. He's done. Lynn sat beside me, her expression a mixture of sympathy and something that looked like relief. I'm sorry, Ivadne. I really am. I've ruined everything. My marriage, my job, my relationship with Daniel. All for someone who didn't even care enough to stick around when things got difficult. Maybe this is an opportunity, Lynn said gently. Maybe you can try to work things out with Caleb. I laughed bitterly. Did you see those divorce papers? He has everything documented, every lie I told, every public humiliation. He's not interested in working things out. Can you blame him? The question hung in the air between us. Could I blame him? I'd asked for a separation so I could pursue another man. I'd publicly flaunted my affair while he stayed home caring for our son. I'd dismissed his concerns, gaslit him about my behavior, and humiliated him in front of the entire community. No, I whispered, I can't blame him. The next morning, I drove to our house, Caleb's house now, I supposed, to try to have a conversation about the divorce proceedings. I found him in the backyard, helping Daniel build a treehouse. "Daddy, look how high we got the platform," Daniel called excitedly when he saw me. "That's amazing, sweetheart," I managed, though my voice was thick with unshed tears. "Can you help us, Mummy? Daddy says we need more hands to hold the board steady." I looked at Caleb, silently asking permission. He nodded curtly. For an hour, we worked together like we used to, our hands occasionally brushing as we held boards in place, our voices mingling as we encouraged Daniel's enthusiasm. For a moment, I could almost pretend that none of the last few months had happened. "I think that's enough for today, buddy," Caleb finally said. "Why don't you go wash up for lunch?" Once Daniel was inside, Caleb turned to me with that same cold calculation I'd seen at his parents' house. "I assume you got the papers." "Yes. Caleb, can we talk about this? Maybe we could try counseling or—" "No." The finality in his voice stopped me cold. "I know I made mistakes. I know I hurt you. But we have 15 years together, a son who needs both his parents. You should have thought about that before you decided our marriage wasn't exciting enough for you." I was confused. I made bad choices. But that doesn't mean we can't try to fix this. Caleb studied me for a long moment. "Do you love him?" "Who?" "Don't play dumb, Ivadne. Do you love Jasper?" I couldn't answer, because the truth was too humiliating. I'd thought I loved him, or at least I'd loved the way he made me feel. But he'd abandoned me the moment things got difficult, proving that whatever we'd had was shallow and selfish. "It doesn't matter," I said finally. "That's over." "Because he dumped you?" The words stung because they were true. Because I realize I made a mistake. "You made a lot of mistakes, but the biggest one was thinking you could have it both ways. That you could keep me as a backup plan while you explored other options. That's not what I was doing. Isn't it? You asked for a separation instead of a divorce. You kept your wedding ring on in some photos, but not others. You never actually filed any papers yourself. You wanted to keep your options open in case your Spanish romance didn't work out." He was right, and we both knew it. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I'm so sorry for everything." "I'm sorry too," Caleb said, and for the first time, his voice softened slightly. "I'm sorry that 15 years of marriage meant so little to you that you could throw it away for someone you'd known for 3 days. I'm sorry that our son has to grow up thinking his mother chose a stranger over her own family. And I'm sorry that I wasted so many years loving someone who was apparently just waiting for something better to come along." Tears streamed down my face, but Caleb's expression remained unmoved. "The divorce will be finalized in 90 days, he continued. "I'm asking for primary custody, but you'll have generous visitation rights as long as you maintain appropriate boundaries. The house will be sold and proceeds split. I think that's more than fair, given the circumstances." "What if I fight it?" "Then we'll go to court, and all of this will become public record. Every photo, every text message, every witness statement about your behavior. Is that really what you want?" I thought about Daniel, about him someday being old enough to read court documents detailing his mother's affair. About my parents, my friends, my former colleagues seeing the evidence of my betrayal laid out in legal filings. "No," I said quietly. "Then sign the papers. Move on with your life. Let me move on with mine." As I walked back to my car, I heard Daniel's laughter from inside the house, probably playing with toys or watching cartoons, blissfully unaware that his parents' marriage was officially ending. I'd lost him too, in a way. Even with visitation rights, I'd never be his primary parent again. I'd never be the center of his world. I'd traded everything, my marriage, my family, my career, my reputation. for a man who'd disappeared the moment things got difficult. And the worst part was, I had no one to blame but myself. Caleb had been methodical, lawful, precise. He'd documented everything, built an airtight case, and executed it with the same careful planning he brought to his lesson plans. While I'd been playing games and posting photos, he'd been protecting his interests and his son's future. I signed the papers that afternoon, officially ending the marriage I'd destroyed through my own selfishness and stupidity. As I handed them to the lawyer, I realized that Caleb had given me exactly what I'd asked for when this all began: my freedom. It just wasn't the kind of freedom I'd thought I wanted. 3 months later, the divorce was final. I'd found a new job in another city, a fresh start where no one knew about my spectacular fall from grace. Daniel visited every other weekend, and slowly we were rebuilding our relationship. But late at night, in my small apartment hundreds of miles from the life I'd destroyed, I sometimes thought about that treehouse in the backyard, about the way Caleb's hands had felt when they brushed mine as we worked together, about the family I'd thrown away for a fantasy that had evaporated the moment it faced real-world consequences. I'd gotten everything I thought I wanted: excitement, passion, freedom from the mundane routine of suburban marriage. But in getting it, I'd lost everything that actually mattered. And unlike the fairy tales I'd convinced myself I was living, there was no second chance, no redemption arc, no happily ever after. There was just the quiet, methodical justice of a man who'd loved me enough to let me go, and who'd been smart enough to protect himself when I chose to leave. I was finally free, and I was completely, utterly alone.